process.
Speaking of your process, how do you go about writing your poetry? Like, do you give yourself a time limit? I want a poem by the end of the week, or is it just sort of as inspiration strikes?
Wow. It's mostly as inspiration strikes. However, when I was writing the Fannie Lou Hamer poems, I had a goal, a number of poems, and I was reading her biography, using that as launching points for the poem. And I'm a Stephen King fan, and one of the things that he said in On Writing is to get up and write every day. Just get up and knock it out every day. And I really do believe that that's a valid way to write. Now, there's another poet I respect whose name is Quincy Troop. He was at UC La Jolla for many years. And his process is to have a yellow legal notepad, and he can't stand to see an empty sheet. So he would just write to get rid of the empty sheet, then turn it over, and then the next day there would be another empty sheet. So he had to write again to fill it up. And I really do believe, people have a lot of sort of ideas about poets retiring to garrets to compose verse, under the influence of absinthe, or there's this deep, I'm inspired, I'm Poe or whatever. But I really think there is a sort of working class, get on the job way to write poetry. And I'm not as proficient at it as I would like to be, but I strive to be.
So in trying to do some research for our interview, I found it surprisingly difficult to get much information on you, either biography-wise or in your body of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you'd be willing to discuss why it is so hard to find anything on you?
Unfortunately, I'm not famous yet, but soon I will be. No, I think that I am what is called an emerging poet. So I don't have a full collection published by a reputable press yet, but I am furiously working on that. And I think that it's a game of stick-to-itiveness in any genre of art, whether you paint, write songs, write stories, novels, write poetry. It's a game of stick-to-itiveness, and I have decided to make this my way. But I will tell you to fill in some gaps that I was born in 1971 in Meridian, Mississippi. I was conceived, however, in St. Louis. My father is a poet, a fairly well-known Black Arts Movement poet. And my mother, though she barely published in her lifetime, was also a gifted writer and artist. And I was raised by a triumvirate parent, my uncle, my grandmother, and my mother. Because my mother was very mentally ill, quite mentally ill. It exhibited itself as eccentricities mostly as I was growing up. But toward the end of her life, after I was grown, she was patently schizophrenic. That being said, for the resources that my family had, they did the best they could. They kept her out of institutions. She was mostly able to operate on medication and lots of love from her family. So in that way, she was a good parent to me, but not able to be a complete parent. And that's where her mother and her brother came in. So with those three, I had rides to play practice and to my forensics competition, and people to show up to watch me and all those things, and to take me to church, and to, get me piano lessons and ballet lessons, and to have what for many children in my neighborhood was a wholly different experience that I was having. What was going on in my house was very different than I suspect what was going on in many of the homes in the federal housing project in which I was raised. So in high school, in junior high, I formed a rap group with some good friends from middle school. And we got a record deal, believe it or not. MC Hammer came to town. This is crazy. And we got a record deal. And then I went out to California. I went to a semester of college, and I told my mother I'm going to be, on Source Magazine, Double XL Magazine Vibe, and be rich, and I'll be back, to buy you your mansion. And it didn't work out, unfortunately. It did. I was like many people who get a record deal, and they're essentially a tax write-off, but they don't know they're a tax write-off. So I spent about 5 years in California being an underground artist, living hand to mouth, and doing a lot of maturing. So that when I returned to my undergraduate studies at Jackson State University, I looked 19. I was 24, but I looked 19, but I was a woman. So the world was my oyster. I was assistant VP in the SGA. I pledged the sorority. I operated a poetry reading series every semester, and I was able to do all of that and party and have a good time because I had mastered multitasking. That wasn't difficult for me because I was older. So now we've had some life-saving situations happen. But do you want to pause it right here?